Hi guys, in this video today we're going to have a go at making the Oogie Boogie man from The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, I did do a fuller length version of this video which you can find over on my Facebook page if you do want to see it in more detail with the measurements of what it was I was doing. So we're starting off with some triangles of cake. Now this is actually some offcuts that I had from a birthday cake that Richard decorated me. So there's plenty left, so I thought why not have a go with this. I've cut 2 triangles. I've just broken one a little bit there. The cake is actually quite soft, so quite often what I would do is put this in the fridge or freezer for a short while to firm it up so that when I'm working with it, it's a little bit firmer. But because I did make it in a Facebook Live, I didn't get the time to put it in the fridge and freezer in between. So we're using some buttercream in the middle, and the buttercream's made with the sugar and crumbs icing, so it was like a cherry bakewell flavour one. It did actually taste quite strong, so I maybe could have put a bit of normal icing sugar in as well as this one. But we're just using it to fill in between our layers of cake. So my 2 layers of cake aren't exactly the same as each other, that's fine, don't worry. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut a little bit of a triangle off the top, and we're going to bring it round to the sides, change kind of the direction of the top of his head. So just have a bit of a play around with where it's going to go, and then put some buttercream on to hold it in place to the other bit of cake. So I'm going to cut it again just here. Let's put some more on there. Apologies guys, my dog is in the background while I'm doing the voicing over, so you might hear my dog. He wasn't with me when I made the cake though. So we're just cutting off the edges now, so there's a bit more of a slope so that we don't get like a sharp edge when we ice the Oogie Boogie man. And I'm going to cut off any cake now that comes further down than the bottom of my board. I want to mark on where I want the eyes, so I think I'm going to put them about here. And then the smile would be just a little bit below. I could have maybe moved the eyes closer to the smile, but it will be fine. So quite often, guys, what you'll see me do is print off a template for this kind of thing, and then I will cut out the template and I'll draw around it for the exact shape. On this one, I wanted to try and do it without, so it was a bit of sort of guesswork as to where things went. But if you've got a picture of what you're making next year, then that's going to help a bit as well. We've cut out the mouth, we've done a bit of shaping and cutting out a bit of an area for the eye. I've cut like a bit of a slope, and then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my balling tool to press the cake in a little bit rather than trying to cut that out, because it becomes a little bit awkward for cutting it. And what we're going to do then is cover the whole thing in buttercream. What I would usually do is put a thin layer of buttercream on, so like your crumb coat, because all the crumbs get stuck in this bit. Smooth it down the best you can, and then I would put this in the fridge for maybe 15-20 minutes to let the buttercream firm up, and then you could add a second layer. Or sometimes I even use chocolate ganache instead of the buttercream for this bit. Now, because this was done in a Facebook Live, so I did it in real time, I didn't have a chance really to put it in the fridge for very long. So it is now in the fridge, but it really wanted longer than what I left it in the fridge, so that I could have given it a second layer of buttercream. For this, I'm actually not giving it a second layer of buttercream just for speed, but it will look nicer if you do. Okay, so we've got the latte colour of the Renshaws fondant that we're just sort of playing around while this is in the fridge. And we're having a look at the different textures. So I've got different texture mats, and this one I think is, I can't remember if it's the basket weave effect. So I just wanted to see what kind of texture it gives me if I press it into my fondant, and then let's put a bit of luster dust on. Or a bit of edible powder. This is a matte edible powder. It's the fractal one that I've got here. Just to see what it looks like. This one's a cable knit matte. I think that one actually looks a bit nicer than the basket weave. Just because I want my Oogie Boogie man to have a bit of texture to him. And then the other thing I'm going to try is without a texture mat, just using the end of my Dresden tool or flower and leaf shaper is this. And guys, if you're wondering where I get any of the things from that I'm using, I will put links. So I do have an online shop, so obviously I sell quite a bit of the things, but I'm going to put links to everything that I've used below the video, okay, so you can find exactly what it is that I used. So I think I'm going to go with that Dresden one. So I've rolled out the fondant, so it's just the Renshaws latte one that I've used. So I've got that ready, big enough to just go over the face. I've taken it out the fridge. And I'm actually using modelling chocolate, so it's the Saracino modelling chocolate that we've got here, to just give him a bit more shape over the eyes, above sort of that eyebrow area, and a bit more to raise kind of the edge of the mouth. I maybe went a little bit overboard with the sort of bottom section of the mouth. I could have probably missed it off the bottom, but I added it anyway. And then we're going to cover that in the fondant. So the reason that we used the modelling chocolate instead of fondant around the eyes is because it tastes much nicer than the fondant, and because it's a chunkier bit, we want it to taste nice. Otherwise you've got lots of fondant that you might end up picking off. And I know that not everybody likes to eat fondant, that's fine. I'm just not very good with buttercream. Okay, so because I predominantly work in fondant, I don't do a lot in buttercream. So for me, I would make a big mess if I just covered this in buttercream. But I know there are plenty of people that would do this in buttercream. Okay, so we're just pressing in and defining the edges of the face. And if you were making this for somebody, guys, you could wear gloves. I'm not making it for anyone. Probably be just me that eats it, I reckon. I eat way too much cake. So I'm pressing in anywhere that I kind of had an indentation in the cake. So you can use the balling tool. You'll see like my fondant has torn a little bit there. It's because I've spent a bit long working with it and it's kind of started to dry. You can fill it in with extra bits of fondant. Okay, so we're going to put colour in the mouth and the eye area. So where I've got a few little cracks, you're actually not going to see it too much when we're finished. So it should be okay. So I'm going to add extra creases and lines. Now, if you've got a picture you can use for reference, and it's going to help you to whereabouts you want to add your lines. So it's got kind of stitching details around his mouth. So I'm pressing in fairly firm for those bits. Some wrinkles, the creases above the eyes as well. And then let's cut off all the extra bits now from around the edge of the face. So don't forget, I've got quite a few other sort of face cake videos. So if it is something that you're wanting to do, you might want to watch a few of these and you just get a few different hints and tips off each of the different videos that we've done. So I've got a bit of buttercream on the board and cake crumbs. We'll cover that up in a bit. And of course you can just wipe it off as well. Let's just add a bit of a stitching line in the top of the hat here. You can really see where the fondant has cracked in the mouth. That's because I spent a long time working on it. And it's the bit where I kind of stretched it out the most. If I wasn't covering it in something else, I would go over that. Like I could put black fondant in the mouth, but I'm going to leave it because we're going to paint over the top. Okay, so detailing, I decided against the texture mats. You could use a texture mat if you wanted, but I decided I was going to do it by hand. So I'm not doing it absolutely everywhere because it would take me too long. I'm just kind of doing crisscrosses with my Dresden tool just for a little bit of texture. So just here and there and the odd bit, but I haven't fully covered it. Then we're going to use some dust. So I've got the Squirrel Brown Fractal Edible Dust and a bit of the dark chocolate one. And we're just brushing this on. Now, I'm not brushing it absolutely everywhere. And I apologise, my dog is now licking the floor. So what you want to do is take your colour, and the darker bits would be anywhere that would be in shadow. So kind of the underneath of parts and the creases. Sort of the underneath of his hat, under his mouth. And then we are going to darken inside the eyes, but I'll go round. So I'm using a big brush at first, because I want to cover bigger areas. Then we swap to a smaller brush for when we want to be a little bit more accurate. So I'm trying to dust that dark brown in the lines we made for the stitching marks in his mouth. So we're going to brush some of the brown in the lines that we made for the stitching around his mouth and sort of the creases around his eyes. Anywhere that you've got a crease really darken. And you can also go over that then with a bit of black if you want to go darker still. You can use the powders or you can use like the edible paint. So the one in the bottle's pre-mixed. I'm going to use the powders today, and to make it more like a paint, I'm going to use a dipping solution. Or you could use clear alcohol or like lemon essence to mix it into like a wet paint. Then we can paint this on. So it will look shiny at first. When this dries, the dipping solution will evaporate and it won't look shiny. So I'm going to go over the stitching lines with my edible pen. So please don't use a normal felt pen. It is an edible one that I'm using here. So we're going to use some purple fondant now. I'm just using the Renshaw's one here. So it's quite soft, which is good for what I want on the board. It's a difficult shape to ice around. I could have really iced the board before doing the cake. Then I could have iced it in one piece. But I think we're going to texture it a bit, so I don't mind that it's going to have like finger marks and stuff. And I'm trying to do it piece at a time, just because it's quite a complicated shape to get it round, okay? So I'm patching pieces together, rubbing the seams together with my fingers. And I want it to look textured, so I'm just pressing in. I suppose you could use your fingers or a balling tool to just make it a bit uneven looking. Cutting off any extra as well from around the edge of the board, guys, don't forget that. Let's put some kind of swirly patterns in. So I'm just going to use that balling tool to press in. I don't want a nice, neat looking swirl, like I want it to look a little bit bumpy. And you're going to do this all over your board, unless you want to leave your board plain, so you don't have to do this bit. Actually, I quite liked it when it just had the one swirl, but I continued and I put quite a few swirls on there. Just randomly around it. I'm going to darken inside the swirls with a bit of the black dust, edible dust in there. So again, guys, remember this is the quicker version. There is a slower version where you can actually watch me doing it in real time, and that was done as a Facebook Live over on my Facebook page. So if you want to watch it in real time, you can do. Also, don't forget to put links below the video to everything that we've used. Now I'm going to go with this nice bright green. And we're going to just stick more to one side of him than everywhere, so it looks like light catching on him. I know he turns green, doesn't he, in the movie at one point, although I haven't done him fully green, but I just thought it would look nice with a bit of light catching on him. And then what I want to do is add some of it to the background so it looks like there's some sort of light in the background too. I think that's it, all finished. So just waiting for his eyes to dry. I'll dull down a little bit then with the black paint. But I think I'm fairly happy with that. I think that took me an hour and a half to maybe just short of 2 hours. Like I say, it's in real time on my Facebook page if you do want to go over and have a look. Or you can check out my other face cakes on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.